What if I told you that one of the most overlooked countries on Earth is preparing to launch Africa's first fully homegrown aircraft, not decades from now, but in the coming years? That a landlocked nation often dismissed by foreign analysts as poor, unstable, and dependent is about to take flight on its own wings? Welcome to Burkina Faso, and welcome to the future. Across Africa, aviation has long been a borrowed dream. The skies are filled with aircraft manufactured in Europe or the United States, piloted with training from foreign academies, and maintained with parts flown in from across oceans. The continent has soared, but always with someone else's engine. But that story is beginning to change. Across Africa and around the world, people write to us, their hearts heavy with sorrow. They see a continent rich in soul, yet burdened by poverty, disease, and forgotten potential. But in their pain, we hear a call. Africa must rise, not with aid, but with unity, knowledge, and courage. To every African heart, do not wait, do not beg, build, lead, dream loudly. This land is ours, and so is its future. Tell us where you are watching from. Comment below. And if this message moved you, subscribe, so you never miss the rise of a continent becoming whole again. Share this video not for views, but for a vision. A dream worth spreading. A free, united, and prosperous Africa built by its own hands. Under the leadership of President Ibrahim Traore, Burkina Faso has unveiled a bold national project to design, engineer, and manufacture the first fully indigenous aircraft made on African soil. No loans, no outside control, no permission slips. This is not just a development story. It is a declaration of intent, a challenge to every outdated narrative about what African nations can and cannot do. A message to the world: the time of dependency is ending. Skeptics will ask, can it really be done? Can a country facing sanctions, insurgency, and economic hurdles build something as advanced as a modern aircraft? The answer lies not in theory, but in action, and that action has already begun. In this video, we explore what could become one of the most transformative projects in African industrial history. If you believe Africa should own its sky, then buckle up, because Burkina Faso is not waiting to be invited to the future. It is building it. It began not with a speech, but with a whisper. In the quiet corridors of Ouagadougou's newly expanded Technical Institute of Aviation, instructors began referencing something extraordinary, not theory, not simulation, but a real project. A national initiative to build an aircraft, not for display or ceremony, but for service. Rumors turned into discussions. Discussions became announcements. And then, the vision was officially declared. President Ibrahim Traore stood before a group of engineers, students, and military planners, and made it plain: Burkina Faso will build its own aircraft. A machine born not in foreign labs, but on Burkinabe soil. Trained not in Paris or Washington, but right here at home. He didn't call it a dream. He called it a duty. For Traore, this is more than engineering. It's a rebellion against limits. For decades, Burkina Faso, like many African nations, was boxed into a narrative of dependency. Foreign aid, imported machines, and technical advisors who left as quickly as they arrived. But this project signals something radically different. It says, we are done waiting. We are building for ourselves. The plan is audacious. Burkina Faso aims to produce a fully functional, hybrid fuel aircraft that can handle both cargo and passenger transport, adapted specifically for the terrain of the Sahel. It will be developed using local resources wherever possible, designed by African minds, and supported by a network of public institutions that have been restructured to serve innovation. More than that, the project has become a rallying point for the nation's youth. University students are submitting early concept designs. Retired engineers are returning from the diaspora to offer mentorship. Military technicians are repurposing their skills from defense to development. It's not just a project, it's a movement. The aircraft, still unnamed, is intended to fly short to mid-range distances, withstand harsh weather conditions, and serve regions often neglected by international carriers. But its purpose extends far beyond transport. As one policy advisor put it, this plane is a message. It says Burkina Faso is not asking for a seat at the table. We're building our own runway. The development process has also inspired renewed focus on education. New courses in aerospace engineering, materials, science, and avionics are being launched. Vocational schools are receiving increased funding, and students who once dreamed of studying abroad are now finding reasons to stay. International observers have responded with a mix of curiosity and concern. Some applaud the ambition. Others, more skeptical, suspect foreign backing behind the scenes. But inside Burkina Faso, the excitement is real. From Bobo Dioulasso to Kaya, conversations have shifted from whether it can happen to when it will happen. Because the truth is, this project is not just about a machine. It's about rewriting what's possible. It's about reclaiming the right to create, to engineer, to innovate without waiting for outside approval. And for a continent often portrayed as standing still, the simple act of taking flight has never felt more powerful. When President Ibrahim Traore declared the intention to build an aircraft entirely within Burkina Faso, skeptics immediately assumed it would be a cosmetic project, perhaps an imported shell with local paint, or a modified design from abroad, given a new name. But that assumption misses the point. This aircraft is not a replica. It is a rejection of replicas. Burkina Faso's aviation initiative is not about symbolic nationalism. It is about engineering sovereignty. The project blueprint makes it clear. This will not be a machine pieced together from leftover parts or overseas donations. It will be a product of indigenous design thinking, shaped by the realities of the Sahel, and constructed with minimal foreign dependency. The government has invested heavily in domestic capacity. A new generation of Burkinabe engineers is being trained in aircraft design, propulsion systems, composite materials, and flight electronics. Instead of outsourcing development, the country is retooling its institutions, turning former military hangars into research labs, and transforming local polytechnic schools into design incubators. Local industry is also being integrated into the effort. Small manufacturing firms have received contracts to experiment with lightweight, heat-resistant materials. Farmers' cooperatives are being consulted for agricultural drone adaptations. Even blacksmiths and traditional fabricators have been brought into the conversation, not for nostalgia, but for their proven craftsmanship and ability to work with unconventional resources. This inclusive model challenges the old development formula. There is no World Bank loan driving this, no Western consultant dictating timelines. The aircraft project is being funded through redirected national revenue, notably from restructured mining contracts and reduced military imports. In other words, Burkina Faso is building this plane the same way it has defended its sovereignty, by relying on its own people. At the core of the plan is a belief that African nations should not have to beg to innovate. For too long, innovation has been framed as something Africans receive, not something they lead. Traore's team rejects that mindset entirely. They believe technology is not neutral. It either liberates or it controls. And to build freedom, you must build your own tools. Already, Burkina Faso's aviation design team has drafted multiple structural layouts. They have partnered with local universities for wind tunnel testing. And while they are not opposed to international collaboration, the conditions are non-negotiable. No intellectual property transfer without equity, no foreign supervision disguised as mentorship, and no foreign branding. This is more than engineering. It is cultural warfare. For decades, imported technology came with imported narratives. African nations were told to be consumers, not creators. They were offered finished products instead of blueprints. That dynamic ends here. Burkina Faso is not replicating what exists elsewhere. It is inventing what Africa truly needs: aircraft that work in extreme temperatures, land on short dirt runways, and require minimal maintenance. In doing so, it is not just building an aircraft. It is building a model, a roadmap, for other nations who dare to believe that industrial power is not gifted, but seized. Because sovereignty is not declared, it is designed. And now, for the first time in modern African history, an aircraft is being designed with that principle as its flight path. No revolution is sustainable without its next generation. And in Burkina Faso, The aircraft project is not being treated as a government initiative alone. It is being handed over, piece by piece, to the youth. At the heart of this movement is education reform. Under President Traore's leadership, technical schools have been restructured with a new mandate. Train creators, not just job seekers. Aerospace engineering is no longer a distant dream whispered in textbooks. It is a course with practical labs, local instructors, and real machinery being assembled right now. The government has established partnerships between military engineering units and civilian universities. Young cadets who once focused solely on defense logistics are now attending classes on propulsion systems, carbon fiber molding, and avionics. Civilians, in return, are gaining access to secure facilities once reserved for national defense. This merger is not just symbolic, it is functional. It reflects a deeper belief that sovereignty is not separate from knowledge, it is built upon it. Thousands of students across the country have submitted proposals through national innovation competitions. Many of the selected ideas, including a modular cockpit design and a lightweight landing gear system, are being integrated into the aircraft's prototype phase. Winners do not just receive prizes, they are offered mentorship, apprenticeships, and in some cases, startup capital to begin their own ventures. But perhaps most remarkable is the brain gain. Engineers from the Burkina Faso diaspora, some trained in France, Canada, and South Korea, are returning. Not for nostalgia, but for purpose. They are joining design teams, mentoring youth, and helping local labs align with international certification standards. They know what many still deny. The future of African innovation will not be built abroad. It must rise from the ground up. Inside classrooms in Bobo, Dioulasso, and workshops in Ouagadougou, something powerful is taking shape. Students once told to seek scholarships abroad are now building flight simulation models at home. Girls who once never saw themselves in science are now learning to solder circuit boards. And across every chalkboard and drafting table, one question echoes: why not us? This is not just an educational shift, it is a psychological one. For decades, African talent was trained to serve external systems. But now, in Burkina Faso, they are training to build their own. As the aircraft project advances, one detail stands out more than any technical breakthrough: its silence. Burkina Faso has chosen not to parade its progress through global conferences or media briefings. Instead, the development is unfolding behind guarded doors and encrypted networks. There are no loud announcements, no international endorsements, only action. And that, in itself, is a disruption. For decades, African industrial projects were expected to follow a pattern: draft a plan, seek approval from foreign donors, wait for financing, and accept foreign oversight in return. By rejecting that script, Burkina Faso is doing more than building a plane. It is building a threat to the old global order. The silence is intentional. Every decision to keep prototypes under wraps, every refusal to release full specs to international press, is part of a broader strategy. This is not about secrecy for its own sake. It is about protecting a sovereign vision from sabotage, manipulation, or preemptive containment. And already, the tremors are being felt. Western intelligence analysts have begun raising quiet alarms. Reports question how Burkina Faso, a nation under sanctions and economic strain, could even think about designing an aircraft. Some suggest hidden Russian or Chinese involvement. Others accuse the government of posturing, calling the effort symbolic or unrealistic. But these reactions reveal something deeper: fear. Because if Burkina Faso succeeds, it sets a precedent. It shows that high-level industrialization can happen without debt. That national pride can be engineered, not borrowed. And that innovation does not need to speak English or French to be legitimate. Diplomatic sources confirm that multiple embassies in Ouagadougou have quietly requested updates on the project. Some have offered technical cooperation, thinly veiled attempts to monitor the process. So far, the government has politely declined, because this is not just about one aircraft. It is about rewriting the rules of engagement between Africa and the world. It is about reminding global powers that Africa has its own agenda, and that sometimes The most dangerous idea is not a protest or a revolution. It is silence, followed by flight. The aircraft project is just the beginning. Inside Burkina Faso's national development strategy, the vision is far more expansive. The Zeta-1, as some have begun informally calling the future aircraft, is not just a plane, it is a prototype of possibility, and it has unlocked a new industrial imagination across the country. Plans are already underway to launch a range of complementary technologies. Lightweight agricultural drones tailored for dryland farming, solar-powered water pumps built for rural communities, a national program to develop electric minibuses for short-distance public transport, and even early-stage work on a low-orbit satellite surveillance system for environmental and border monitoring. Each project follows the same philosophy: local leadership, minimal foreign dependency, open-source design, and public access to results. Government ministries are now required to integrate national innovation mandates into their operations. The Transport Ministry must prioritize local manufacturers. The Education Ministry must embed hands-on design labs into every technical curriculum. Even the military has been tasked with converting former defense engineers into national infrastructure contributors. Burkina Faso is not building for show. It is building for function and for the future. This new approach is also beginning to influence neighboring nations. Officials from Mali, Guinea, and Niger have visited Burkinabe training centers. Regional dialogue has quietly emerged about forming an African Innovation Compact, a multilateral agreement to support indigenous technology development and reduce reliance on imported systems. Meanwhile, grassroots excitement continues to grow. In villages across the country, children now play games where they pretend to fly the future Burkinabe aircraft. In urban tech hubs, young coders are prototyping navigation systems and testing aircraft telemetry software. The shift is cultural as much as it is technical. The message is clear: innovation belongs here. President Traore has stated that the goal is not to compete with global giants like Boeing or Airbus. The goal is to break the myth that Africa cannot build. The goal is to make sovereignty tangible, something you can touch, fly, and trust. In a world where African innovation has too often been buried beneath red tape, donor conditions, and foreign patents, Burkina Faso is building something radical. A future where African nations are not waiting at the door of progress, but designing their own entrance. This is not fantasy. It is not distant. It is happening now, and what began with one aircraft may soon become an entire ecosystem of self-made solutions crafted for Africa, by Africa. Burkina Faso is not waiting, not for permission, not for applause, not for another round of promises from distant capitals. While the world debates whether Africa is ready for the future, one nation has already stepped onto the runway. The project to build a fully homegrown aircraft is not just about aviation, it is about reclaiming a narrative. For too long, African ambition has been filtered through the lens of dependency. But now, Burkina Faso is challenging that story with tools, with training, with tenacity. What we are witnessing is more than engineering. It is a quiet revolution, one that does not shout, but builds. And in its silence, it speaks louder than any imported slogan. It says, we can think for ourselves, build for ourselves, and rise on our own wings. From rural apprentices to returning engineers, from military labs to school classrooms, the country is mobilizing not just to manufacture a machine, but to manifest a mindset, a belief that the sky is not owned by those with the most jets, but by those with the courage to dream and the will to construct. And now, the continent is watching. From Nairobi to Dakar, from Kinshasa to Bamako, a question echoes louder each day. If Burkina Faso can do this, what is stopping us? So, to every young innovator across Africa, your moment is coming. To every government that doubts its own people, look again. And to every outsider still clinging to old ideas of African limitation, prepare to be left behind. Burkina Faso is not asking for a seat at the table. It is building its own. If this story moved you, share it. Spread the word. Because the engines are warming, and the sky is no longer the limit.